Hello, everybody. Dave Neal here, stand-up comic and host of Bachelor Nation News. It's the off-season, baby. No new episodes until July 11th, 2022. So it is barrel scraping season. It's your boy, Barrel Scraping Dave. Follow me on Instagram at DNeals. Speaking of scraping the barrel, I always love talking with Susanna, also known as Bachelor Data. We discuss the move of the Kardashians over to Hulu and what this might mean for Bachelor, the franchise. Will they be leaving ABC and going to a streaming platform? Here's her reel. Let's play this, and then we'll bring her in for a chat.
Hulu just announced some crazy numbers. And yes, it's about the Kardashians, but I'm going to explain why this matters to everyone. Now, it's no surprise that the Kardashians are famous. They have hundreds of millions of followers, gaining hundreds of thousands of new followers every day. And before you speculate that they're buying followers, their net worth shows they don't need to buy followers. These are not small influencers. They make a crap ton of money from real people who buy products from their businesses. After 15 years on network cable, the family announced that they were ending their show and moving exclusively to Hulu, marking the first major cable show to cut ties and move fully to streaming. The show premiered last week, and now this came out. A Hulu spokesperson shared that the premiere was the most watched premiere on Hulu ever in the US, also shattering records globally. Before y'all ask, Hulu has never released ratings. But earlier this month, Dancing with the Stars announced that they were doing the same thing and moving to Disney+. I don't think these shows will be the only two shows to move to streaming. Streaming has better algorithms to get the shows in front of the right audience, and data's showing everybody's leaving cable.
All right, without further ado, how does that apply to Bachelor Nation? We are very excited for our next guest. She's a regular on the Bachelor Nation News over here. She excels at Excel, a statistical superstar, an analytical acrobat, Bachelor Data, a.k.a. Susanna. There she is. Hello, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Good, thanks for stopping by the studio. Appreciate you. So what's going on in the Bachelor world on the statistical side of things?
Oh man, not a lot right now. I mean, this is the longest off season that I feel like we've had in quite some time, but it is interesting to find these overlaps in what's happening in pop culture and how it's going to relate to the Bachelor world.
So you're like our forecaster. You're like, are we going to get new followers? Are we gonna survive this off season, the winter, if you will? I mean, this is because you and I are kind of like products of the pandemic, I would say, and this is our first big gap in content.
Ever. It's the weirdest. I was complaining because I was so tired from Bachelor. There was no break, and now I'm like, okay, I'm ready for it to come back now.
Yeah, it's a long 3 months, and we've got a couple more to go. By the way, I had a great idea that what we should consider doing like a Bachelor premiere or Bachelorette premiere party in Boston on July 11th. I don't know if you're around. We could do like a stand-up, maybe a little stand-up, and then maybe like a meet and greet or something. I don't know. It's just a thought.
Oh, that'd be fun.
I think we could be a good little team there. I didn't want to put you on the spot, but just throwing that out there for our audience if they'd be interested. So we watched this reel here about the Kardashians. They're moving to Hulu, which is kind of a surprise because, the streaming services are still kind of like getting their sea legs here, and the Kardashians are like a behemoth. Do you think they moved to Hulu because they saw the future, or do you think that's just their only home they had?
I think it's really interesting. They probably wanted a little bit more creative control over their show. It had been on on E Network for 15 years before they decided to call it quits. But I think they also probably needed a break. Now, what I find really interesting is just how much streaming has grown, because we all know people are cutting the cable, people are moving to streaming, but there are so many streaming options. Just today, Netflix is reporting massive losses in the stock market because their subscriber counts have been dropping ever since they announced that they would be increasing their pricing. So people are very much doomsdaying right now about Netflix, but a lot of shows are moving over to streaming just because of how successful it is.
Yeah, and what I love about Bachelor is that they maintain terrestrial like network, you got to watch them once a week, and that's one of the last water cooler shows. Do you think if it moves to Hulu, it'll still be in a format that, do you think if they moved, it would still be in a format that's weekly? Because I don't like the Netflix dump it all at once. I'm overwhelmed almost at all that drama.
Yeah, I don't think that they get rid of the weekly format. Hulu definitely doesn't do that either. We're seeing that with the Kardashians that they don't. And if people are wondering why we're comparing to Hulu, Hulu is owned by Disney, and Disney owns ABC. ABC runs Bachelor. And there's some overlap there. There's some Warner Brothers also, which is why we kind of see HBO. But I don't think that they drop it all at once. I think that that's really good for binging, which is not really Hulu's style. but I think it would definitely increase the accessibility of the show to people, regardless of the time that it's on. I know people know that it's on Hulu next day, but then it's like, okay, well, they have to wait 24 hours and then there's spoilers. Whereas now people know that they can always go to Hulu to watch the Kardashians whenever they want. And with other TV shows, they can watch previous seasons all they want.
Yeah, and as big as the Kardashians are, I don't think they command the amount of pop culture that the spoilers do within the Bachelor world. Like if you get spoiled on a Monday morning, or I'm sorry, on a Tuesday morning, that's kind of ruins the. You want to kind of go along with the pop culture that exists already. My personal thought with Hulu is with these streaming platforms, they can target ads directly to the consumer, so the ads are just that much more valuable. I mean, who's watching any whatever Prilosec advertisement they're getting on on your network TV? It's laughable. When people travel to the U.S., they go, "Geez, what's up with all your commercials?" And we're like, "I know it's pharmaceutical lobbyists, it's a whole thing," but it is pretty wild. It's all car insurance, and it's just not probably that valuable for what people want. So you might lose some audience by going to Hulu, but you might gain like a profit margin there.
I don't think they're going to lose audience by moving to streaming. I think they're actually going to gain audience because streaming is kind of like social media. Like if you know social media, the goal of every social media platform is to tailor their algorithm to keep you on the app, be it TikTok, be it Facebook, be it Instagram. This isn't necessarily a good thing. And in society, I really think it's splitting us because it's showing you just the content that you will like. And that's not necessarily a good thing for developing opinions, especially, in the broader sense of things. But streaming does the same thing. Like when I open up my profile on Netflix versus when my boyfriend opens his profile, we see wildly different things. And that's the bonus that streaming has over cable, is that if you're watching a lot of reality TV, Hulu's going to start to show you Kardashians, it's going to show you Bachelor in Paradise, it's going to show you Married at First Sight. Whereas you may have not seen those shows if you were just watching cable because you just know who to tune in for based on what people are talking about if you remember when the show is on.
Yeah, it's a great point. It's a different, it's targeted algorithms versus the cultural, like old school thought of like, I turn ABC on and I watch the programs. We go Wheel of Fortune and then we go into this and we go into that. And we're just not there anymore. We're in a buffet. We pick and choose what we want. And I mean, I'll tell you what, for me, I mean, being on the West Coast, I watch the show on a bootleg stream, like out of Tampa. Like I'm watching the grainiest version of the show just so I can get it on East Coast time. So I feel like anybody who's invested enough to actually watch the show and not just someone who, fell asleep watching ABC, those are the valuable people you want anyways, your core audience that's going to stick with you every episode. And like you said, you're going to be introduced to a new audience, but also there is change that exists. And if there is an audience that is old school, doesn't want to do new things, it is a core part of the Bachelor audience, which is like, just this, there's an older generation that watches. So I feel like the younger people will jump ahead, and maybe this is ageist of me, but I feel like there might be people that go, nope, I don't, like the people that left when Chris Harrison was fired, they go, nope, I got morals. I'm not paying for one more app. And, I don't know why they sound like that, but I think all in all, you're not going to lose anybody. And because we thought, we had rumors coming out that Bachelor in Paradise might be canceled. And then the thought was, well, maybe because they were saying, the media buys for ABC were locked in and we don't see Bachelor in Paradise over the summer. What could it be? Oh, well, maybe it's streaming. And if that's the case, like, do we really care at all? Does it make a big difference?
Yeah, I think it would honestly be a good move for Bachelor to go that way. So I recently started analyzing some Netflix shows. So I started doing The Ultimatum, Love is Blind, and I actually casually tracked Love is Blind back in 2020 when it came out during the pandemic. And I was doing an analysis for The Ultimatum the other day, and I was like, oh, let me see where Love is Blind season 1 is in terms of Instagram growth. And I had just taken their follower accounts a month and a half. They had all still grown. Like, every single contestant from the first season 2 years ago is still growing every single day on Instagram. Meanwhile, Bachelor, that's unheard of. The only reason you grow on Instagram after your season is done airing on cable TV is because you became the Bachelor, or you won. That's the other reason, is that you won and people want to see your growth. But still, that dies out after a month or two. or you have some crazy compelling story in the news that everybody's following. The best example of this was Hannah Brown, Tyler Cameron, and the Quarantine Crew. They kept growing like crazy for months, and that just doesn't happen. And the reason why is once the show's over, there are very few ways to go watch it legally. Like you said, like Kardashians, when they came out on Hulu at midnight, everybody watched it at the same time around the world. It dropped at the same time for everyone. Meanwhile, you're on the West Coast, I'm on the East Coast. You have to use like some weird stream to be able to watch it live with me. Or when my parents lived out in California, I was 3 hours ahead of them in terms of watching the show, and I couldn't talk about it with the people that I cared about talking about it with. So just cable TV isn't helping these TV shows. Like nobody can go back to rewatch them. Watching it live is really difficult if you're in different parts of the world. Like it's a no-brainer. Like move to streaming.
Yeah, and the question I have as to why that hasn't happened here, or my thought, I guess, would be that, you've got a lot of like old timer execs, and if they move to streaming, they lose whatever deal that they've got with either the networks or, I mean, do you think because ABC, they can hold on to the Bachelor franchise and even like break even. It's so easy for them to be like, all right, that's 2 hours a week we don't have to fill. So it's almost like I wonder if ABC would allow that, or would the Bachelor franchise have to wait till ABC drops them?
Yeah, I'm definitely interested to know the behind the scenes dynamics on how that all is negotiated. I don't think it's very public, but I'd be really interested to see who's negotiating for what, because the franchise has definitely become less popular in recent years. It started to become less popular well before Chris Harrison left. Like that's not anything new. I think a revival would be good for them. It's not just shaking up the format of the show, but it's offering it in more ways. I had somebody who DM'd me and she was like, I'm in Costa Rica and I have to find crazy ways to watch this show because it's just not on here. Like it's a no-brainer. Put it on streaming so everybody can see it. You get a bigger audience, you get more revenue, so the execs can make more money.
Yeah, and it comes down to, I suppose, as we talked about earlier, the lack of targeting advertising means that they don't have the deals outside of the U.S., so they don't see the profit that exists. So why push it there? I mean, we had this problem with Bachelor in Paradise Canada. They ended up releasing it to the U.S., but for a while, I had a VPN. I'm stealing people's cable. I'm trying to do all these things just to recap the show, and it's like, why would you turn down the audience? You've already paid the full overhead to have the show. And then I think there's so much bureaucracy and red tape when it comes to like these networks that we look at it as an audience as like, well, there's more profit to exist somewhere else. And I think to people like ABC owned by Disney, they go, no, we're not, if we start to pull things away from ABC, then what else is going to want to leave ABC? And then all of a sudden we have a failing network. So there's probably some bigger picture, like they'd probably rather lose out and maybe lose audience by keeping it terrestrial that we're not even thinking of. But yeah, as far as getting targeted advertisements, I mean, there's other versions of Bachelor, Australia, New Zealand, there's a bunch, right? And the US has a pretty huge budget. It's still the capital of entertainment, and there's a plenty of global, audience that would watch the US version if it were accessible to them. And that's just not the case. And like you had mentioned in your stories, which of course everyone at the bottom of the screen here, you can see Susanna's Instagram at Bachelor Data. What do you at? 117,000, just crushing it over there. What's it like?
I think I'm at 114. It fluctuates in the off season. You know how it is.
I'm giving you a couple extras. So the idea that, you had mentioned in your stories, the idea that we should want the contestants to continue to grow their Instagram or whatever their social media is, because it'll encourage more people to want to become contestants. The juice has to be worth the squeeze here. Can you talk more about the idea of like wanting of why the influencer lifestyle is almost important for the show to kind of keep gaining its popularity?
Yeah, and I think a lot of people look at the influencer industry as a negative. Like, if we can make it stop, then people will start going on the show for the right reasons. It's like, that's not going to happen, first off. I mean, even if they were to go back to, what was it, the early 2000s, back during like Brad Womack 2.0, back then, contestants actually had to have, at the time, Twitter was the big one. They had to have their Twitter accounts private the whole season, and they could only make it public at the end. And basically what happened was the franchise realized, hey, if we let them be public and they just promote the show every week and people go follow the people that they like from the show, they'll be reminded to watch the show. So it's like free marketing, right? Well, now if you take that another step, right? It's not so much like if people become super popular on the show, we'll get more people that try out to be on the show that'll be good. It's more if people are popular from the franchise and stay relevant in the media, that only helps Bachelor continue to be relevant in the media, right? So Love is Blind, for example, when the season 1 came out, the contestants, some of them got married afterwards, launched a book, like they just kept growing and being relevant. So season 2 was begged for on Netflix. So they launched a season 2. So the more press that you have around the show of people who, Hannah Godwin went to Revolve Fest and blah, blah, blah. It's like, oh, people are reminded, oh, Bachelor, I wonder what's going on with Bachelor. I haven't watched it in a few years. I should check in. It's one of those things. It goes hand in hand that if the people from the show are popular, the show is going to continue to be popular. And I think we're definitely seeing a shift right now where instead the contestants are really getting spiteful towards the show and it isn't really helping their image.
Yeah, that's a great point. Because we look at like Survivor, Emmy Award-winning show, they don't really gain big social medias from it. It's like once you're done in the Survivor world, you're done because they take you off of the island or the coastline or whatever, and you're done. What we get to watch on Bachelor and other dating shows is the relationships progress. Oh my gosh, Clayton cheated on his thing. Oh no, he didn't. We're like, there's the stories and the drama spills into the real life. So of course, the benefit that we see clearly now is that we want to consume all that. And I think what happens with these execs is that they're just so short-sighted. They're like, well, we're not monetizing off of it. I mean, I look at the Bachelor produced podcasts as the biggest piles of crap that's out there. They don't even have good quality mics. The bandwidth's bad. They don't, if I were to run the Bachelor, I would have Nashville, Chicago, LA, I'd have studios in all these markets. You rent them for like $100 an hour. High quality videos. Just give the audience the extra content for free, and they'll come back for the big stuff, the premieres, the finales, and all that. But they've just they got into that pandemic Zoom mode, and they haven't gone out of it. And it's like, hello, we're done with masks on planes. Can we get back to in-studio podcasting? Is that the least we can do? Is a high-quality performance? I mean, Demi Burnett just released a podcast that's the highest quality podcast out there, the best video. And it's like, why is Demi Burnett?
Yes.
Did you notice her podcast? I mean, it's really great quality.
Yeah. And meanwhile, we have people that are literally like laying on their couches, using AirPod, the Apple headphone mics. And like, yes, I'm using my Apple AirPods, but I'm using a really good microphone now for our conversation,
We're independent, you know what I mean? We're not on the if you zoom in on Joe's eyes, you can see a basketball game on in the background and he's just kind of like there. I love making fun of him because I'm like, what are you guys doing? Like, I'm trying to give them some advice. Like, you guys are dropping the ball. You're letting accounts like us actually, use high quality microphones and actually get things accomplished here. We have some questions. Okay, go ahead.
One quick question. I also want to point out the difference in how ABC treats former contestants with podcasts versus like CBS, for example, where Survivor, for example, or not even Survivor, Big Brother, like they have former podcasts or former members that have podcasts. Like Rob has a podcast. They'll have them in the backyard at the finale interviewing contestants. Like they bring them onto their turf. Like they lift up their people who recap the shows. And it's really interesting because you hear, Tammy was on Peter's podcast recently, and they were both basically talking about how they were shunned from the franchise, which is wild to me that even Peter would even say that publicly. Like, yes, it happened, and nothing against Peter. It's more against the franchise for why would you shun one of your most successful seasons from that has a podcast that recaps the show? Like they should be treating all former contestants who recap the show similar to how they treat Nick Viall. Like,
yes,
they should be treating all of them respectfully and as partners because it's just promoting their show. Like we promote their show. So same thing, you know, and it's not like we're like the people who are coming in like trying to do, like, we're not the people actively trying to spoil the show or anything like that. And neither are most of those podcasts, but it really seems like an interesting dynamic
Yeah.
that ABC doesn't do.
Now, I do get why these contestants do get jaded, because we too covered this yesterday. This Tammy podcast where they're jaded, and it's part of it's because they were commodified. They had their likeness taken, edited a certain way, and they didn't get out of it what they thought they could have gotten out of it. And people have said, well, you know, your employer is never your friend, and I get all that, but there is some sort of like, well, let us trash you, and we'll get you back on the show. We'll get your numbers up, this and that. And they barely get paid for Bachelor in Paradise, a stipend, but they don't get paid much. And it's not too much to ask. I mean, I've got ideas. I just throw these ideas at the wall, like a pirate party boat that just barges off the coast of Bachelor in Paradise. When you get kicked off, they swim you out to the boat, and you get to podcast with Tammy and Demi. Like, I got these things will all be like, yeah, A-list hits.
Awesome.
A-list hits. I don't put me under the palapa. I'll talk some, but I don't even want, like, they can't afford me. You know what I mean? But like, these ideas, it's just like, what are we doing? So we have a few.
Yeah, I get that 1,000%.
Yeah,
I do want to point out my comment about people of color, especially being tokenized, and like, I totally get them being jaded, and even leads like Peter, you know, a lot happens behind the scenes, but the franchise should be supporting these people and not just throwing them away after.
Yeah, and we're lucky that there hasn't been a drastic issue with self-harm or something like that. And I'm sure there have been, you know, we just don't always, you know, the worst self-harm is usually the mental issues that people face from it. And then they go, you know what, I didn't get as much out of that as I thought I would. And some people do, and some people don't. All right, let's go to some of the questions. This was a one that we already covered. I live in Costa Rica, and it's impossible to watch The Bachelor, but I can easily watch Love is Blind and all Netflix reality. Yep. We got to go. I guess Susanna and Dave are going to have to go to Costa Rica and do some live shows too. Aren't they already on Hulu? It's ABC Live and next day on streaming. So this would be this. Hulu would basically be not just demand, but it would be at, you know, the start time. It would still be like must watch, because I have Hulu Live, which is jacked up the price, and that kind of operates just like cable. So it's kind of be like semantics. They would just switch over to like a digital streaming service. All right, let's go.
And drop it all at the same time so people don't have to wait 24, 48 hours after it comes out to watch it.
So this comment says, at the end of the promo, Bachelor in Paradise said streaming on Hulu. So this Bachelor in Paradise will be on ABC as well, right? It's just both?
Yeah, I think a lot of people are getting confused. So in recent years, in promos, they're starting to put Hulu logos at the end to try to get people to watch it on Hulu too. I think that the Bachelor in Paradise, when they finally said, hey, it's coming back, it's not just Hulu, it also says ABC next to it. What you're going to want to look for is, like with the Kardashians footage, it has exclusively on Hulu or only on Hulu.
Right. All right, so next one. Okay, I have no idea if you'll be able to answer this, but for me, the follow-up questions that come to mind are, how do productions make money? I assumed it is through advertisements in the commercial portion of shows. If that is the case, then I figured streaming doesn't make that happen. And then the second part, I know Bachelor probably makes money off of other side things such as podcasts, Bachelor Live on Stage, but I guess I don't even understand how a show makes money to pay its cast and crew.
Yeah, so cable TV, they make money strictly from advertisements. That's how it is. And in recent years, there will be some weird ads that Bachelor will do, like within the show, where they'll promote like a specific car that's being used on a date. But when it moves to streaming, the way that they pay for the TV shows is with the subscriber money, and then also with targeted advertising. So it's kind of like a double dip, and kind of like what you talked about. Imagine where we watch the Super Bowl, right? It's just on cable TV, right? But imagine if we could watch it under our streaming profiles. The advertisements that I would get versus what my boyfriend would get, for example, very different. And that costs advertisers more money when they can target ads into a specific niche. So if they're just pushing out advertisements, think like magazines or cable TV, like, you know, news at night, it's just going to a general audience. But if they can target women's razors to just women, and then men's razors to just men, that costs the advertisers more money, but then there's more payoff from those ads.
Yeah, it's like spear fishing versus fishing with a net. They know who they're attacking, and we see
Perfect.
this on YouTube where people go, Dave, you made a video bashing Shein, and then all of a sudden I got an ad for Shein, and I'm like, that's on you. That's on the user end. Like if you're getting ads for things,
Yep.
you can click a button that says don't show me this anymore. But yeah, YouTube's all that's kind of what I like. I'm not considered an influencer because my content doesn't influence what people buy. It's their YouTube. I'm kind of like I'm like a healthy kind of separation from what the ads show people and what I do. I'm just making my content. If people don't want ads, they can do YouTube Premium and all that jazz. All right, next question here. Doesn't Disney own ABC, so wouldn't Disney Plus be the obvious streaming choice? That's a good question.
Okay, so by the way, the whole network of who owns what is the most complicated web if you've ever seen it. But typically, what Disney will do is that the shows that are a little bit more appropriate go on Disney Plus, and the ones that are a little bit more risque, dicey go on Hulu. But we are kind of starting to see that change now that Disney Plus will allow you to do a pin for your account so kids can't pop over into your account, for example. So I think we just started to see that with Marvel, that Daredevil is now available on Disney Plus, which is very much like is not like a PG show at all.
Now, how do you feel about Dancing with the Stars going to Disney Plus? Because for me, that's kind of not as an obvious choice as Hulu would be.
Very interesting. I was not expecting Dancing with the Stars to be the first one to make the jump from ABC, but I think it makes sense because especially it's on at times where it's competing with other big things like Monday Night Football and whatnot, that it gets off on the programming. It will be interesting to see if they change some of their formats and of their songs maybe,
Yeah.
because not always is everything 100% clean for children.
Oh yeah, they're doing the Ramba. It's like I got to take a shower after having a cigarette break. And again, I think for Dancing with the Stars to go to Disney Plus, that's a real like step into the graveyard for me. As far as like I'll watch Dancing with the Stars and I'll get into certain seasons based on who the contestants are, but I don't know. There is something about crossing over. Like I have Disney Plus, but I'm like, all right, I got to go into that app now too. It's just like one extra step you have to take. And if someone's on the fence, someone's not going to take that step. I think that's all we have for questions. So look, hey, yeah, we'll have to talk about it potentially doing some sort of event together. Maybe people can leave a comment if they're interested in that, and we'll see if we can drum up some attention. Maybe that could be a fun little way to kick off the next season or something.
Oh, that'd be awesome. I would so be there.
Now, lastly, how's life been? You retire. You're retired. You didn't retire. You're probably working harder now than ever. But you left the teaching world. How has life been? Full time as Bachelor Data, and is it Pop Culture Data? Pop Culture Data.
Yeah, so I have those two accounts. I'm about to launch a new one as well. That's totally unrelated to Bachelor and pop culture. It's been good. I gave myself some time to really relax for the first time in my life, I feel, for January and February while Clayton's season was on, and have some really awesome projects going. But man, it has been a breath of fresh air to get my life back to myself and spend time with my boyfriend, with my family. I'm seeing my nieces and my nephews tons now. It's awesome.
Oh, good for you. I'm so happy to hear. And are you covering Selling Sunset at all? Are you watching that show?
I have data on it. I have data on a lot of shows that has not made it onto social media
That's
yet.
a show that I've been watching, and just like I know it's a little different than Love Is Blind in the sense that it's a recurring thing, but I just stumbled on season 4. I watched the first episode. I'm 10 minutes in. I go, I like this show, and I went back to season 1 and I watched the whole thing. And that's like the type of show where I want to know what their personal lives are like when they're not filming, because these are kind of like cool people that have something going on, and I just feel like that would fit into that world of like who's dating who. They kind of make it kind of just sexy, but who's dating who. Are we missing anything before I let you go here? Do we cover all the stuff of the potential move? When would you have to guess that the move away from ABC would happen, if it happens, for Bachelor?
So I think I'd be interested to see how much of a landslide other shows are to jump over, but I'd probably say 2 to 3 years at the latest that they would at least start improving their streaming presence, if not fully going over to it.
Yeah, there's no harm really for the franchise and for ABC to start streaming on Hulu same time, maybe for a year or two, and just like, introducing people to that idea. Cause it really is semantics. And, what people have to realize, you think something's free on TV versus on Hulu, versus a paid subscription. Like, we're all paying for things with our time. You know what I mean? Like, there's no such thing as a free lunch there. And, but
it's like Bachelor.
Yeah.
A third of every episode live is advertisements. A third of it.
Oh yeah, it's and here we are, just soaking it all in, like the addicts that we are. People can find Susanna at Bachelor Data on Instagram and at Pop Culture Data on Instagram. Anything else to promote? Your courses, are those going on?
Courses are still going on, and you can follow my new account launching next week, The Data Creative, on Instagram and TikTok.
Oh, fun. Very exciting. Well, thanks again for jumping on the show over here. It's always good to hear from you. And I'll talk to you soon.
All right. Thanks for having me.
Bye. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed my conversation, make sure to give Susanna a follow on Instagram at Bachelor Data. And I am at DNeals. If you want bonus content, go to patreon.com/Dave Neal. We'll talk to you guys in a little bit. Bye, everyone.